This story I'm telling is about my grandmother, and it's from years ago. One explanation I have to make is that because the story is long, I'm sending it in several parts. Second, this story is completely true. At least 20 villagers witnessed and confirmed the incident. My grandmother lived in the village, and the women of the village would pick a kind of vegetable that grows in the desert in the spring and cook food with it, called tara. At that time, my grandmother was pregnant with my little aunt, and together with my great uncle, whose name is Ali, and my second uncle, whose name is Muhammad, they go to the desert to pick taro. My great uncle was 17 years old at the time, and my second uncle was 9 years old. In short, it is evening, and their work is finished. And my grandmother, who has been busy picking turnips, comes to her senses when she sees that the sky is getting dark, and they start to head back home. A little way down the road, the fan is drawn into twilight and darkness. They see an old woman suddenly coming towards them from the crevice of the valley. My grandmother said, I was very surprised. What is this old lady doing here alone in this desert at this time? I said to myself, maybe he's gone too. Pick him up. I didn't know what happened. Suddenly, I got scared. My body froze. My hands suddenly started shaking. My fear grew as I walked forward because we all knew each other. We even knew each other from the neighboring villages to some extent. But I had never seen that old woman before, and when she came closer and I saw her full face, I was convinced that my fear was not unfounded. The old woman's face was completely pale, her skin was white, her hair was orange, her long fingers were naturally stretched and wrinkled, and her fingernails were like claws. My grandmother, who was unconsciously anxious and had a mysterious fear, suddenly stopped and said, Who is this? My grandmother, my little uncle Mohammed, who was walking ahead, suddenly stopped and said, Who is this? My grandmother holds my little uncle Mohammed on her stomach, like a shield in front of her. My great uncle Ali, who was a teenager, instinctively and unconsciously senses danger and stands between his mother and the old woman. The old woman says to my grandmother, Where have you been, daughter? My grandmother says, I went to pick leeks. The old woman says, Let me see how much you have. And I went to my grandmother's side. At this time, my uncle Ali stood in front of his mother with a stick that he had with him as a walking stick. The old woman said, Jalonia. The old woman said, I don't have your Mars. I just wanted to see your basket and try it. He attacks my grandmother, and at one point, he digs his sharp nails into my grandmother, while Uncle Ali attacks the old woman with his stick, and the old woman only reaches my grandmother's scarf. She takes the Roman scarf with her and starts running away. The strange and scary thing about this story was that my uncle, a young man of about 17, couldn't even get close to the old woman, even though she was flying. When I'm sure of my grandmother's health, I'll continue on towards the village. It's almost dark. A little while later, my uncle notices that an animal is cautiously following them. When she looks closely, she sees that it is an old woman who is quietly and secretly following them. They are really helpless now, and my grandmother is crying in fear and asking God for help. He asks Vicky, who is returning from there, to tell them about his ordeal. He says, You go so I can take a look around. No matter how much he looks, he doesn't see any sign of the old woman. And my grandmother brings these scarves and delivers them to the house. But the old woman took my grandmother's scarf with her, and the family doesn't pay attention to this issue. And they thank God that it's over. But none of them know that this is just the beginning of the story. There is a story where a mother and her baby die inside her womb, and the rest of the incident begins late at night. My uncle, whose mother was my baby, is now 36 years old and has two children of his own. In short, when I got home at night, the same gentleman who had just arrived was telling them about the village. When the neighboring ladies heard about it, they gathered at my grandmother's house and insisted on what had happened. In short, the old woman was the subject of discussion until late at night. Meanwhile, the door to the house opens on its own without anyone being there, and my grandmother says she's coming to see me, and she faints. In short, they quickly bring a knife and a black cloth to him, surround him with it, and sing his praises. and he was unconscious for 2 hours, and then he gradually regained consciousness. His voice became clear, and one or two of the women close to him were supposed to sleep with him. In short, a few days passed after that incident, and everything was over. And the villagers also think that nervous stress that night caused him to go into shock. But my grandmother swore that night that she saw the old woman watching her from behind the glass door and laughing, saying, "At first I thought I was imagining it, but when I looked more closely, I saw that I wasn't imagining it." Thank you for listening to this beautiful story so far. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel to hear the next episode and ring the bell to be notified.